Okay, another thing that's really super important is functions. Functions are a way to really centralize all your code and keep everything easy to edit as well as really efficient. So for example, anytime you have a piece of code that you're going to be using more than once, you can declare a function with that code and just call it back by using its name. So what we've written here is I've said a function is a list of instructions that you assign a name to. After that, you simply refer to that name in order to execute the entire list of instructions. As you can see here, the metaphor is that the waitress says to the cook, BLT, and he says coming right up. So in that quick second, with just that simple 3 little letters, she has said to him everything that you see on this list here. He understands that he needs to use these ingredients and these directions and so forth to go ahead and prepare this particular thing in this way. So this is basically akin to a recipe. Now, that's just a metaphor. In terms of computer language, it means that you're going to declare a code block, which is basically one line or more of code, and you can basically call that back using a name. So for example, we could have 500 lines of code in a function called calculate, and all we have to do is type that word calculate to call that entire function and execute that entire 500 lines of code. So it's extremely efficient way to use your code, and it's also a great way to keep everything nice and tidy. And so if you're coming back to your projects and adding to them and so forth, it makes it really easy. So that's a metaphor that we're looking at here, and we're going to go ahead and look at a couple examples right now, and then we'll also expand on that as we go along. So I'm going to go into Setup Factory here. I'm going to go into the Actions area and click on Startup, and we're going to just set up a basic function here. Again, I'm going to put in an application exit action here, and then we'll start up here. Now, the main thing with a function is you're going to declare it. And you do that by saying function. There we go. And also you have to have an end portion to that declaration. Now, a function has a few different components to it. Some of them are essential and some of them are non-essential. For example, the variable values and the return values. But in this particular case, we're going to go ahead and name our function first, and that is an essential thing that you need to do with all your functions. So we're going to go ahead and call our function say hello. Okay, and then we've got some empty brackets here. Now, this is a non-essential portion of the function. Basically, we can pass value or values to our function by putting them inside that bracket, but for now we're going to keep it simple and not pass any values. Inside the function and end statement here is where we would sandwich any code that we want to be executed when we call this function. So when we type say hello, it's going to execute all the code that falls in between the function and the end statement. Let's just go ahead and put in a simple dialog message box. Okay, there we go. Now again, we could do what we call a return value, but that's a non-essential portion of the function, so we're going to set it aside for now. And we're just going to go ahead and call our function here by typing in its name, say hello, and we'll go ahead and run this and see what happens. As you can see here, our application said to us hello world. So it's actually executed that function because we called it. Now let's press OK. Let's go back to our application and let's remove the call to the function here, and then let's see what happens when we run this. As you can see, nothing happened. It started the application and it just exited it. Let's go back and look at why that is. We've declared our function here, we've named our function, we've put some code inside there, but why didn't it execute? Because we didn't actually have the function call in place, and that's why it is. So you have to make sure to have that function call in place. In this particular case, the name of the function is say hello, so we use that name as the call. Now you can name your functions anything you want, but typically you want to try and name them something meaningful so that you know what they do at a glance. Now this is a very simple example of a function that we've looked at here, and we'll look at some more complicated examples as we go along in the chapter here. But I wanted to keep it simple here so that we could isolate just the basics of what a function is. A function is just a block of code that we can call by calling back the name that we've assigned to that block of code. So we could have in between this function an end statement here where we've typed our dialog message action, we could actually have 1,000 lines of code in there, and we could call back that entire 1,000 lines of code and execute it simply by typing say hello. So as you can see, functions are extremely powerful. It's kind of an amazing thing when you think about it, and you can actually store sets of functions inside tables. So you're basically writing your own custom actions. And it's very simple to do, and as we go along here we'll take a look at some examples that take advantage of that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next video lesson.